Hey everyone, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter, aka Father Fett, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. And today, of course, is a very, very, very special day. It's Star Wars Day. So may the 4th, of course, be with all of you guys.
And with your spirit.
And yeah, there it is.
So, of course, we are broadcasting live on Facebook. So, hopefully, people are joining in. And welcome to this special, special broadcast from a galaxy not very far away at all. Joining me, of course, on our panel is our full podcast crew, including Angela Cialana.
Hello, people. Welcome to the cantina.
Mike Creevy.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Thomas Sanjurjo.
Hello, everyone.
And Andrew Hermes.
Hello, hello. I imagine we don't have that much to talk about today, right?
Oh, no. not much at all.
Not a big deal.
We're
at
real
all.
chill. Yeah.
So, of course, before we jump into, we're going to kind of start with some of the big news that's hit us today and in recent months. But first of all, I wanted to throw this out there to you guys. Did you guys do anything to celebrate Star Wars Day today?
Yes. Yes.
What did you guys do, Thomas?
What'd you do?
We had Wookiees and cream shakes and hot
Nice.
burgers and and my kids are all dressed up like my kids went just crazy bonkers and dressed themselves all up as Star Wars characters. And so we finished watching the Clone Wars, which I won't talk about, but oh my gosh,
Yep.
that was incredible.
Mhm.
Yeah, had a great day just celebrating May the 4th.
Yeah, I put on a Star Wars shirt. I have my Return of the Jedi shirt
Nice.
on right now, and I was playing some Star Wars music during breakfast, with my daughter, and just again to the mood. So, yeah, and caught up on all the Star Wars news today.
Yeah.
I got on the I think it's the Ambient Worlds YouTube channel, which is just hours of like movie music, kind of like all edited together. And I had for whatever reason the Hoth setting really kind of worked for me because I was grading. So that's and I was like, well, I might as well be on like a windy, icy planet, while I'm doing that. But I have my these were the droids we were looking for T-shirt on, so that's always a good one. And my daughter, she got what did she wore a BB-8 shirt today, so we were kind of palling around, so that was kind of cool. And it's funny, she calls Resistance Star Wars Kaz. She just knows it for the main character's name. She's like, Daddy, it's Star Wars Day. Maybe we could watch some Kaz. And I'm like, yeah. So we slipped that in, and I managed to get in the Clone Wars finale and the first season, or the first episode of the Disney Gallery on the directors
Nice.
specifically for Mandalorian. So
Cool.
more to follow on that. That was pretty cool.
Initial thoughts, though? I haven't seen it yet, but I plan to.
I'm excited, and I we've all seen, I think, so much like behind the scenes like snippets, and now it's nice to get the deep dive because I'm sure they're going to be going through different aspects of the production. And so just watching that, it was only like a half hour, and even in that one, I mean, I saw stuff that I didn't see a fraction of that in any of the the other behind the scenes stuff. So I'm pretty excited for that.
Awesome. Angela, did you do anything
I
fun?
was, well, this is my fun for today because I was a good little, Jawa, and I focused on my job for today. So, clocked out, made dinner, and, prayed and all that good stuff, and came right over here. So, yeah, this is my celebration.
Awesome. Well, I'm sort of in the same boat. The only Star Wars related thing that I was really able to do was watch the finale for Clone Wars, and then my brain has been sort of consumed with making sure this Facebook Live goes off smoothly. So I think we're good though. So this is exciting. So a couple of the news things that we had already sort of mentioned was the finale of the Clone Wars streams today instead of on Friday. So that's one of the biggest things that came at us today. The other thing was the Disney Gallery, Star Wars The Mandalorian, is also streaming the first of 8 episodes today on Disney+. Today is also when Disney Plus is going to allow you to stream all 9 of the Skywalker Saga movies. So feel free to binge on all of those in the next few days.
Nice.
So the biggest bit of news over the last month or so that I really want to talk about is Star Wars: The High Republic. So I'm not sure you guys all at least have kind of got a feel for what that is, but for those of you who don't know what this thing is it's been teased for well over a year now, called Project Luminous. But Star Wars has now about a month ago unveiled what they're calling the High Republic. And so essentially what it is Lucasfilm is going to launch an epic new era of Star Wars storytelling that will be explored through multiple voices in adult and young adult novels, children's books, and comics from a variety of publishers. The High Republic features the Jedi as we've always wanted to see them, as true guardians of peace and justice. It's a hopeful and optimistic time when the Jedi and the Galactic Republic are at their height. But of course, into this glorious new era, something wicked this way comes. So this is super exciting for me. These stories are going to take place about 200 years before The Phantom Menace. And the first books and comics are set to debut at Star Wars Celebration Anaheim in August of this year. And the book is Star Wars: The High Republic, Light of the Jedi. And so I'm just super excited, and I'm assuming you guys are as well. And what gets me super excited about this is that I think, and dare I say this, but I think I'm glad that we are leaving the Skywalker saga behind. And I am excited to finally go back to a place where we don't know any of the characters. It's a new story. We can develop those emotional connections with new characters and follow them. And it's early enough in the timeline that what they're doing isn't really going to have any sort of, well, maybe major impacts on the Skywalker saga. I want to kind of get away from that. So what are your guys' thoughts?
I think there's been a lot of hunger for it.
Okay.
Like that's that's one of the big talking points around The Last Jedi was that it was going to be a move away from the Skywalker saga, and so I think people want it. I definitely appreciate that that's something that people want to branch out into, and I've liked especially the comic books that have dealt with other time periods that aren't about the Sith, that aren't about the Jedi in that sense of like having these giant battles, but in just the daily peacekeeping and the things that they do, because there's still wars that are going on and they still have to be involved, and I love seeing that kind of stuff played out.
Yeah, I think too that there's a way to balance it with exploring, and I think I'm from what I saw, I'm excited for that. Again, that balance. It's the Force, right? So, but the balance between the familiar and the new, because you do have a timeline, like you guys said, where you can explore these new stories. But there's little things like, well, hey, Yoda's a lot older than 200 years, so like it's like ostensibly you can fit him and possibly some other characters or other references in that are familiar enough, that there's like a hook there's a connection, but it's not just some trope, you know what I mean? Like it's not just like a cameo that's forced, it would be organic to it. So that's something I'm looking forward to, seeing how they do that.
I liked that they described the Jedi at this time as like the Texas Rangers.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm in Texas. So that was kind of cool. And I also liked that, so they released a couple of videos kind of teasing this whole High Republic stuff. And one of the neat things I thought was when they were creating, they got all these like authors and cool people together to brainstorm what they were going to do for Project Luminous. And they came up with High Republic based off of this question of what scares the Jedi. And I thought that was such a cool question, because of course we've seen kind of like fear factor into different storylines throughout like the Skywalker saga and the little offshoot stories here and there, but to really kind of tackle that question and to discover that through all these new stories, I think is just so exciting. And I just love that, they were inspired by my favorite character's quote from A New Hope, where Obi-Wan is saying, like, for over 1,000 years, the Jedi were the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy, right? So we've always kind of wondered, what was that? What was that time? What were they doing? So I'm really excited to see that.
Yeah, just give me more Star Wars. More Star Wars. Yeah, something that's outside of the Skywalker, narrative, and because I think for a universe like Star Wars that wants, as a property, if you look at something like, obviously, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe or anything like that, all these little offshoots, whether it's in the movies or in the comics, they breed success. And for a property like Star Wars, like, the foundation's there. So, as long as you don't, put the right people behind it, and you make compelling, stories and characters, you can't help us, just as a fan, anticipate it like crazy. And, as a company, Disney, as a company, they're just going to rake in more money. So this is it's a win-win.
That's why.
Yeah. I think what has me excited maybe the most about it is that, like, none of these are movies. They are all books. They are all comics. They are all young reader type novels. And I grew up in an era before Disney bought out Lucasfilm. So I grew up reading the novels and the expanded universe and knowing that the books connected to the comics, and they were all that we had without any new Star Wars movies that were coming out. So for me, this is sort of hitting that, maybe, I don't know if I want to call it a nostalgia itch, but it's hitting what I loved about the whole Star Wars experience when I was growing up as a kid. And it's definitely going to be for those who want to get into the books and aren't just wanting movies. So it's I'm quite excited for that. So August is just a couple months away. So another couple news items that we have. The Mandalorian season 2 was announced that it's in post-production now, premiering fall of this year. Bob Iger said October. So
we shall
maybe,
see.
Hopefully, but it's good that they're in post production and they were able to do all the filming before all of this COVID stuff kind of locked us all down. The other not officially confirmed sort of rumor, but the talk is that season 3 is already in pre-production. So. And then the other huge news, again, not officially confirmed by Star Wars, but there's a lot of reports out there that Rosario Dawson will be playing a live-action Ahsoka in season 2 of The Mandalorian.
I'd just like to point out that we haven't even gotten Ahsoka in The Mandalorian confirmed. This is still all rumor mill stuff, and they're dancing around it very, very hard, trying not to say that she's there or she's not. So
I feel like if she's not, she's never gonna be, because she's like kind of like seems to be sort of confirming it but not, and I don't know.
And Dave Filoni is the expert at saying things but not saying anything. So he is not confirming or denying that this is happening. But in
fact, just before we started tonight, my friend sent me a ET interview with him, with Dave Filoni, just from earlier today. And it was hilarious because she asked him about that. I don't know if you guys saw it, but I don't know how he did it. But like, she asked him that question, and knowing he couldn't answer it, and by the time he was done answering it, I almost forgot what she asked him. I was like, that was a good answer. I was like, what? Oh, wait, we were talking about Ahsoka. What are you doing now? So we'll see.
Do you think it would be a good move to put a live action Ahsoka in The Mandalorian season 2, or would that just be more fan service and not,
It's funny because they've been talking about like, we're getting away from the Skywalkers, and here's Anakin Skywalker's Padawan that we're all talking about, which of course she is different. She's not a Skywalker, but in the Clone Wars animated episode, we saw a couple, was it last week or a couple of weeks ago? She called him, and she called Anakin her brother, which is of course like that she was trying to hide, her identity. But I think it's just kind of funny. Are we going to see her would we see her? I've seen speculation that maybe she is doing something with the child. I think she would definitely be a wise guardian for the child, for sure, or at least maybe someone who can point the Mandalorian in the right direction, perhaps. Who knows?
She's so deeply tied to the Mandalorians now, too, with these, this last set of 4 series. Like, she's so entrenched with the identity of that entire people that it's hard to escape her in the Mandalorian if you're going to really dig deep into their culture.
Are we allowed to mention anything about episode titles that were made public for season 2 or not?
Go for it. Just disclaimer. They're not. I don't think they're
only because
they're not official.
Right. Only because the one that caught my eye was some reference to a sorcerer, which made me wonder because the way that Jedi were described in the end of Mandalorian season 1, and even that it was humorous too. Remember, he's just like, I have to go to a planet of enemy sorcerers. Like he's just like so. I don't know. Like there's the only place that I know of that they've used that word in Mandalorian so far is in some sort of Jedi related terminology. So that might be a little hint. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's just too much intrigue, with her character to not revisit her story. I mean, the way, obviously, with the way Clone Wars ended and with how Rebels ended, especially, it's there's still a lot of mystery about her character and where she's been and what she's doing and what her deal is. So they had to explore it at some point, whether it was another animated series or a live action series. So I think. It might be fan service, but at the same time, her story is not complete. So maybe this is the space to do it.
Well, and they did have a novel that sort of explored a little bit of her time between the end of the Clone Wars and during the Empire. But this would be definitely still new territory. And I've just found it amazing that Ahsoka has come to where she is in terms of the fans liking her, because when she first showed up on the scene in the movie,
the worst.
She was
you wouldn't know it.
Right. She went from a hated character to one of the most beloved characters, and she doesn't show up in a single movie.
Right.
I was just talking to a friend today on the phone, and he was saying he had watched the final episode of Clone Wars, and he said, I really didn't like Ahsoka at the beginning, but now she's like my favorite character in Star Wars. It's amazing how somebody can just have that much of a change of heart about a character. But it's taken years, of course, and her character has developed so much. But it's truly a testament to Dave Filoni's writing and his love for the character, and Ashley Eckstein's awesome acting.
Voice acting, yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think she's with us to stay for a while, and I think so is Dave Filoni. So, so that's exciting. Another. A little bit of news, just kind of in general, the other couple series that are coming to Disney Plus, the Cassian Andor series. The only kind of current update on that is that Diego Luna is going to be joined by Genevieve O'Reilly, who will reprise her role as Mon Mothma from Rogue One. So that's pretty cool. I'm excited for that. It's going to take place 5 years before the events of Rogue One and kind of lead or show where Cassian Andor was before the events of Rogue One. So I don't think really much is known other than that. We don't.
Do you guys think it puts? Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna. I wonder if it puts pressure on some of these actors sometimes when it's like, okay, so 5 or 6 years after we make Rogue One, I'm gonna have to play myself 5 years before that. So, like, it's like, okay, so Diego Luna, like, you gotta make sure you're eating well, and like, it's
he should talk to Ian McDiarmid.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of when Gods and Generals came out, like 10 years after Gettysburg, but it takes place before Gettysburg, and you have all the Jeff Daniels and all these actors. I think they did okay, but there were some scenes you could tell it's like You look 10 years older than you did.
Well, does
last
anyone watch Better Call Saul?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Bob Odenkirk. Like they try with like different wigs and stuff,
Yep.
but he's totally older than
Right.
he was in Breaking Bad, and it's supposed to be well before those events. If the actor is good enough and you're investing in the story, I guess you can get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and then the other Disney Plus series that's upcoming, there's more, but the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which I think everyone is super excited about. Unfortunately,
Ewan McGregor has aged well for it, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
he's
well,
right.
Inverted problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
he's appropriately aging from Revenge of the Sith. But that one is delayed. The production was supposed to start in August of this year, and it's been delayed to January of 2021. The sources are saying that the writer Joby Harold was he left, and Hussein Amini left the project back in January.
Right.
And Joby Harold is the one who's come on to write the upcoming series. But we also know that Deborah Chow, who directed some of the Mandalorian series, is going to be the director for the series.
Yeah.
And we
I
all
think
loved
those
her.
were some of our favorite
Yeah.
episodes.
Yeah, they were
That's
some
what I
of
was
the favorite
gonna say.
episodes.
I remember
Absolutely.
thinking when the first one she directed at the end, when it pops up with her name on it, I just remember getting really excited knowing that I'd heard that she was going to be directing the Obi-Wan series. And that's awesome.
Speaking of directors for episodes from The Mandalorian, did you guys see the big news release this morning about
Yes.
Taika
Yes.
Waititi?
I had to walk through the house and I was so excited. I'm like, and like, because my wife and I have watched his stuff ever since the Vampire series that he did. It's so good, and we've like gone back and found all of the things that it's called the Things They Do in the Shadows, and it's if you
Brilliant.
haven't seen it, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant, and it hits all the notes that he has in like Thor Ragnarok that are just really just the comedy, but then also the underlying drama of everything. He's so good at that, and so I'm very much looking forward to his take on anything Star Wars, really, especially after watching The Mandalorian.
Anyone who hasn't seen the first episode of Gallery, his segment in that is probably my favorite. It's just awesome.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. He's doing a full movie though now instead of just an episode of a series.
Yep.
So that's
Right.
That's going to be really awesome. The other bit of news that came out with that release was also that Emmy-nominated writer Leslie Headland is developing a new untitled Star Wars series for Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And I'm thinking that one's going to be female centric because of
Yeah.
her past work. Or like, well, she has that Netflix series Russian Doll, I think.
Yeah.
And she's done some other projects that are like more heavy on the sort of female characters and the female themes. And I know that Kathy Kennedy had talked about, I don't know if it was maybe a couple of Star Wars celebrations ago, that she was interested in doing something like maybe a rom-com or
Right.
something
slice of life.
related to yeah,
I'd love something
like
like
something
that.
a little bit different, offbeat. So that would be neat to see, where they're heading with that. Would it be something like Lost Stars, which is a really great Star Wars novel that is also a love story that takes place right before the Empire kind of shows its face, and so anyway, I'm excited about that series to see where that's going, because I think it'll be a little bit different than the sort of action heavy,
Right.
gritty type of stuff that we've been seeing.
Yeah, I'd love to see something like Babylon 5 or Deep Space Nine, where it's like location centric and, just not even Mos Eisley, because Mos Eisley is too overdone, but like, a cantina or just a spaceport and the daily lives of people that live in that spaceport and all the weird stuff that comes through and happens. And then, every once in a while a Jedi pops up because it's the Jedi,
Yeah.
and that they're off camera or only temporarily there, and it's just what these guys are doing on a day-to-day basis.
That's some of what they did with, and it's not my favorite per se, because I think it is more geared towards younger kids. But Resistance I think Angela, you had said this a ways back that it kind of it takes a little doing. Like when you first start with it, it's kind of like okay, but it's probably like the first like. Well, I mean, I think pretty much the whole first season, and most of the second is more or less in the same place, and they do kind of. I think that was the first time I had seen any attempt really at that. So I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, with Star Wars, if they could lean just more into like comedy. I mean, like the Kylo Ren undercover boss skit, like,
oh my God,
like I watched the whole series just about everyone that works, everyone works at the Starkiller base. Like it's like I would watch that show and I mean, to this day that's one of the like most watched SNL skits in recent memory. I think they could lean in heavily into like you said, the rom-com or just playing comedy or just play with genre. I mean it's wide open.
Has anybody watched the Troops, the old Star Wars Troops thing? So somebody took Cops, right? The show Cops. And they made Troops out of it. So it was just like following this set of stormtroopers as they were trying to search for these droids on this desert planet. Absolute riot, and definitely worth a watch.
There was something, I don't know if it was a series or not, but I saw something like in the early days of YouTube where it's like stormtroopers sitting at the bar and they're just like, man, I just feel like we're great shots until we put these helmets on, and then of course they played with that a little bit in Mandalorian, in those last few episodes. So like, there's room for that, definitely.
I think the other kind of big question about this though would be what time period is this series going to be set?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. We know nothing, but what would you like? What would you want to see?
Slice of life. Well, I think we already have post Return of the Jedi with the Mandalorian, so I don't think they would go there. It's possible maybe prequel era, although Clone Wars has definitely touched a lot on that. I don't know. Maybe Resistance era.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind right in the middle of the Empire. Right in the middle of the Empire, but on somewhere where it's kind of not as consequential for them to be there.
Yeah. Which is kind of like that's the way it is, and
They're also to the point with the Rise of Skywalker now being released that they could start to venture post Rise of Skywalker. I don't suspect that's where this series would go, but it could, since there's no planned movies out that way.
Right.
That would just require them to develop a lot of backstory, I think, to kind of touch all that untapped territory. So,
well, I think that's sort of it for the big pieces of news. Did I miss anything, guys?
I don't think so.
No, I'm just pumped for that new Claudia Gray novel that's going to be part of the High Republic about a Jedi in his cloister. Like, what is that going to be about?
Yeah.
Whatever the Jedi version of the Liturgy of the Hours is. Yes.
I am one with the Force is one with me. The Force is one with
Those are, the antiphons for every prayer.
Yes.
Okay, well, we're going to kind of get into then the next segment that we're going to kind of focus on. And the question that I had posed to everyone here was, what does being a Star Wars fan mean to me? And so that was a question that we all kind of pondered about, and I'm going to kind of turn it over to you guys. But before we do that, I just want to throw this out to anybody who's watching the live stream that we're going to be doing kind of a fun Star Wars Q&A in just a little bit. So if you have a question that you want us to answer during the stream, please type them in the comments and I will gather them up and we will answer them as best as we can. So feel free to just type those away and I'll try to kind of watch for them. So in the meantime, though, we're going to kind of talk about just what it means to be a Star Wars fan and what it means to me. So I'll take the last shift on this one. So I will turn it over to whoever would like to jump in first with that question.
Okay. I'll go. So for me, Star Wars is first of all family because my dad introduced me to Star Wars, And I just remember watching it at home with my family all the time. And, I'm also the kind of person who really likes big stories, grand stories, fantasy, those stories that really tell us a lot about life. So it allows me that opportunity to really kind of be imaginative and explore all those, cool themes about the human condition and, all that good stuff. But ultimately, I think it's really just fun. I mean, you can't be a Star Wars fan and this is my opinion, of course, but you can't be a real Star Wars fan and have a stick up your butt. You've really just got to be cool with being goofy, and when you have like wizards with, glow stick fights and, big teddy bears and bandoliers and, just silly things that our kids play, and you take them seriously in their own little world. I mean, that's what Star Wars is to me, is just this great fun sandbox to play in and exchange ideas with your friends about and enjoy with family.
I think it might have offended a lot of Trekkies out there. Maybe. I don't know if that was a slight.
Well, I didn't say anything about Star Trek, did I?
They're out there saying happy holidays, like that article Father said.
So
instead of May the 4th.
it's funny because my brother is watching the stream and he's the Trekkie in the family, so he might have words for me later.
That's because he's not a Star Wars fan.
There you go.
Right.
I mean,
I just want to piggyback right off what Angela's saying. I mean, it's and what Father said earlier too, using the word nostalgia, which sometimes gets a bad rap, but it's not not nostalgia like living in the past. It's honestly, Star Wars feels kind of like a friend that's been around like my whole life. Like there was no period of my life that didn't have it. And what's so cool is, of course, we've all seen. We're not old guys, but we're getting older, and you're seeing these people who, for one reason or another, like grew up with, especially now with the Clone Wars, with the news and the buzz of that. It's neat for me to see like some of my students in high school and stuff like growing up with their doorway into Star Wars was Clone Wars. And I didn't even see Clone Wars till like 2 years ago. Like it just was I couldn't have access to it for a while until recently and all that kind of stuff. So for me, it really is rooted in the original trilogy, growing up in the wake of that when we were born, my brother and I, just after when it was in theaters and stuff. So we didn't see it in theaters till the special edition came out. And that was the first movie we went to see. Kind of my dad dropped us off on our own to go see, and consequently, as fate would have it, that theater, it's not my favorite theater anymore, but that's the one that we ended up, because of ticket sales and stuff, seeing Rise of Skywalker in, which was kind of cool. Nice. Just happened that way. So it's just been this thing. It's been with me my whole life. And as I've gotten older, there were periods where it was like, you'd be a little embarrassed. And I know Dave Filoni even has said in some interviews about like you kind of get sick of just always being teased. At some point, you get used to it. But now, like, I feel like it's just over the last, really since the prequels, I feel like more and more like just sort of, I don't want to say socially acceptable, but kind of, you know what I mean? Like it's just, I think more people appreciate it. It has grown. It's continuing to grow. There's prospect for it growing in this just incredible way. And the last thing I'd say is, like Angela said about the fun aspect of it, this is difficult because I'm not going to we didn't make fun of Trekkies. I'm also not making fun of Lord of the Rings fans because I'm one of them. But for me, so like Lord of the Rings for me is actually my more between these two sort of mythos, comparing. That one is the much deeper and richer one for me personally. But I'm not gonna like go out and have like a wizard fight with my daughter outside as rapidly as I might have a lightsaber fight. Like for whatever reason, it's more like it opens itself to play. I feel it's but it's not that it's not deep either. So we've been talking a lot on the show lately about some of these really deep things that have come
super deep,
in these animated episodes, and let alone the live action ones, which just shows that it's it's so much beyond like cartoon versus like real people, and it's more serious. It's all one thing that's really increasingly diverse, and so that's just some of my reasons for loving it as much as I do.
Yeah, for me, it's again, it started with family. I mean, when I was a young age, I was in, I don't know, maybe at some point in elementary school, my parents introduced the movie to me, and they weren't big Star Wars fans. I mean, my parents, they each migrated from Iraq, and they were still in Iraq when the first movie came out, and they're like, "Oh, this is the movie that we watched in Iraq when it was like a global phenomenon. Like this movie is a big deal." They didn't appreciate it, they didn't get it, but when I watched it, I was captivated by it, and then I really my fandom really started in middle school when Phantom Menace came out, and I had a couple friends that were super into Star Wars, like. Even before that movie came out, they were all into the novels and stuff, and they really got me into it. And then I remember going to the theater, being dropped off, and watching it with all my friends when the film came out, and it was just that theater experience stays with me more than any other one. So it's again that nostalgia factor is obviously a big part of it. I mean, whenever you see these characters, come back in, when you see like that first trailer for like when Force Awakens came out, like when you see Harrison Ford on screen and Chewbacca, it's like it hits a certain part of you, in a way few things do, and Disney knows how to bank on that more than anyone else. But we're here for it. So yeah, it's really it's always been with me, and like you're saying, it's more accepted now. It's cooler now to be a Star Wars fan, than maybe before. And that just makes it, fans being more accepted allows like these stories to keep coming to life, and we're able to move into this new sort of future of Star Wars and see what it evolves into.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny listening to you guys because it's not about family for me, except for my own like nuclear family. Because growing up, I was like the complete oddball in my family. My brother's very much into sports. My mom's very down to earth. My dad's has an incredible propensity to fall asleep at any movie. Like I've tried to watch The Matrix like 20 times with him, and he has fallen asleep every single time. It's amazing. So like. I was the Star Wars fan, and I had little Kenner toys. Before I even knew what the movie was, I just had these little Kenner toys that I would play with. And then when I first saw the movie, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like my toys came to life, and so it was a big deal for me. And I loved Star Wars. Like I was the kid that would just read all, like every single novel that came out, every comic book that came out. I could name to you all of the different variations on the attack transports, and knew all of the different blaster types and what they were and what they were good at, and all of the backstory and history as it existed and changed, because a lot of people don't realize that it has not been this huge established canon the way it is. It's always been very shifty, and as more things come into existence, we start to see a real story where there was only like rumor or speculation or something before. So I've stayed through all of that, and it upsets me because, like you guys are talking about, it upsets me when people call it a kid's story.
Yeah,
because it's the insinuation.
Well, it is.
Yeah, well, and that's the insinuation there is that it's something to be dismissed. Whereas,
right.
My turn to that is that you're talking about fairy tales. You're talking about Grimm's fairy tales. You're talking about Mother Goose rhymes. You're talking about these things that stay with you for your entire life because you took the lessons in from them when you were a child. And the nostalgia you guys are talking about, it's like going back to that sense of a core value, a core principle of who we are, and being able to just touch on something simply and open the door to the greater breadth of it. Like we've been doing with talking about some of these really deep themes that are coming up in this essentially kids show in the Clone Wars. And the Mandalorian's a little bit more mature, but it still is that kind of fantastical, fun, lighthearted approach to science fiction, not like Blade Runner or something like that. So I hate it when people dismiss it with that statement, because to me that's such an important part of what makes it really impressive and really worthwhile.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna share a little bit of my story, which I think might be it's coming from a more deeper personal level, and I would say that for me, Star Wars, being a Star Wars fan, at least today, is sort of a reclamation of my inherent goodness. And I'll explain what I mean by that, because when I was a kid, my first introduction really to Star Wars was Attack of the Clones. Me and my brother saw it in theaters. And before that, Yoda creeped me out as a kid, so I'd never really got into it until Attack of the Clones. So Attack of the Clones was like this total mind-blowing sort of experience. And so then I started to read the novels and watch the other movies and just really loved it. But when I was in junior high and high school, then I was reading. And so the books became sort of my friends because I didn't necessarily have a lot of friends in high school. And so the books were just awesome for me in that world. But also I was bullied a lot in high school, junior high and high school. And so one of the things that I was bullied for was being kind of the geek and the nerd and the goody two shoes and, the smarty pants, whatever you want to say. But I internalized that as my hobby of reading Star Wars is something to be frowned upon, is something to be ashamed of. And so but I loved it so much. I never gave it up, but I sort of became a closet Star Wars nerd, if you will. So I collected the novels and I still have the majority of most of them. And so, when I'd invite friends over, they would be surprised at how many novels I had, because I was never really, vocal about it. And so I just, even going into college, it was still something that I just kind of hid away. And it wasn't until I went into seminary and started to just kind of process like why I reacted that way and what that meant for me and who am I in the eyes of God? Who am I? The most fundamental human question, who am I? I started to have to really play with that and look at that. And I finally came to this, full understanding of who I was and who I am is a beloved son of God the Father, which is, every single one of us is a beloved son or daughter of God who loves us and created us. And he created us with that inherent goodness, that we are created good. And so, as long as we are not sinning in some way, the things that we like are also good. And so it wasn't until that point that I finally put the pieces together. Like, my love of Star Wars is not something to be ashamed of, but rather it's something that adds to the uniqueness of who I am. And it reveals, God's creative work in my own life. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell, but I've embraced it very clearly since that point, and have kind of taken on the mantra of Father Fett and the podcast, and so I really enjoy it. And one of the other things that it really has helped with is when I encounter people now, just either whether they're parishioners or whether they're just random people at Comic Cons that I go to. It allows me as a priest to be relatable and approachable. And so it's a really cool thing to not just kind of be that mystical priest that you can't talk to, you can't relate to,
Right.
But rather I'm just a normal guy like everybody with the particular calling to be a priest. But yes, I will go to the midnight release of The Force Awakens, and just enjoy that kind of stuff. So that's kind of in a nutshell what being a Star Wars fan means to me personally, and I hope that other people can see that in their own lives as something to embrace. It's a way that God, shows his creative hand in each of our lives. So
Very cool.
So the next kind of section that I wanted to do, since this is a video podcast, I wanted to do a bit of show and tell. So I asked each of my co-hosts to share up to 2 items, their favorite Star Wars item, whatever it might be that they have, and so to kind of show it off and talk about it. So since I went last on the first set of questions, I'm going to go first this time.
Go for it.
So, so I have my first thing that I want to show you is
Yeah.
Yes.
The Mandalorian helmet.
But
All right.
there's something particularly unique about it. You can kind of see it in the video. Is that this is a Jango Fett helmet that I made, and it is made completely out of cardboard.
Nice.
So like it's all glued together, and I made this when I was a deacon, actually. And
Awesome.
I was on a summer assignment, and at the parish, and things were kind of quiet, so I just took it upon myself to go research how to do this, because I've always wanted a Jango Fett helmet, because he's one of my absolute favorite characters. And of course, you can see behind me that I have an actual Jango Fett helmet now, but I didn't 4 years ago. So I took it upon myself to build a cardboard one, and I can actually wear it. But the problem with it is the way that the cardboard hardened is it kind of squashes my nose, and it's really uncomfortable to wear. So I don't wear it, but I keep it, and it's just really, really cool. So
That's pretty sweet.
that's item number 1. Item number 2 for me is speaking of the Clone Wars. This is it's the novel for the Phantom Menace. So, but what's unique about it, and I'll kind of show it up, is that this is only one of 5,000 copies that were ever produced, and there's all signed by Terry Brooks, and it's a particularly unique edition of this particular novel. So I'm a novel fan, of course, and so when I found this, in fact, my brother Greg would be irritated if I didn't tell this, but he actually found it at this bookstore that we were both at, and he pointed it out to me, and I, of course, decided to buy it on the spot. So, and I mean, with Clone Wars and Darth Maul and everything, something I wanted to show off. So, those
Very
are
cool.
those are
Awesome.
my 2 show and tell items, and one of you guys can go next.
All right, we'll do reverse order. I will grab mine. So, you talk about community and Star Wars, and I'm a role-playing game player. So I do tabletop role-playing games. I had a group that I was with for years, and we would meet every week for years. And one of the things that I did was I created and ran a Star Wars RPG. I don't know if you can see that.
Put it
Nice.
close, or,
Close on there. Closer, further away, one of the two. It's a character sheet, anyway.
Yeah.
And
Your background's blurred. I think that might have
I
been
think
it.
that's what it is. So it's a character sheet for a Star Wars campaign that I created. Now there are some in existence. I have played those as well. I was not satisfied with them because they were focused primarily on like the combat systems and things like that. And so what I did was I delved a lot more into the morality and destiny sense of things. And so the characters had to go through these shatter points along their creation of their character. And so many of them chose Jedi, and they had to choose at certain points whether they wanted to fulfill a light or a dark destiny. And so they had to, kind of confront their Sith nature. And it was fantastic because it ended up making some very dramatic points for the characters. So we played that for probably about 2.5 years. I think we were playing that campaign, and it came to a fantastic close. It was just a really explosive kind of tying everything back together. Really great, excellent Star Wars story, if I do say so myself. And when I parted with them as the DM, they gave me a Sith hologram.
wow.
Which
That's
is
awesome.
phenomenal.
Okay.
Oh, and it opens.
Holy
Opens, and
smokes.
it
Wow.
has a book inside it, and it has it has a crystal, a Jedi crystal, and a symbol in it and everything. This is fantastic. So
Yes.
this is well out of the reach of my 7 children, so they cannot touch it.
Good.
So when I brought it down tonight to look at it, they're all like, "What is that thing, Dad?"
Nothing to see here. Did you do that?
This is not the toy you're looking for. So that is by far and away my favorite Star Wars thing that I have.
I guess Andrew, are you up next then, or
Oh, sure. I'll go.
I think
Yeah. So yeah, I actually found this recently in my parents' garage. There were some boxes that I've had left over since I've left the house, and I was going through it, and I was actually surprised and happy to find this. It is the Star Wars Episode 1 Phantom Menace official souvenir book that I
Hey.
got at the premiere.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, when I saw it in middle school, and I was just flipping through this. I mean, it's it's got your typical behind the scenes stuff, and cast breakdowns and all that sort of. It just took me back to that time, and it's I vividly remember getting this. Like they were giving it out at the premiere I was at, and I was just shocked that I still had it, and very happy, obviously. So I'm gonna make sure I keep it in good condition. I don't know how rare this is. I haven't looked it up, but it was pretty special. This is like I think the oldest thing that I own that I can remember that's Star Wars. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I also have these. If I want to show off one more thing, I got this at Comic-Con a few years ago. It's the Star Wars. It's the Black Series.
Oh yeah.
If anyone's into the figurines, and this has Rey and
Nice.
old Luke. Yeah, and
Very cool.
yeah, I cosplayed as Luke. I think one of the only times I've ever cosplayed, like seriously, and I actually made. I wish I still had it. I made the robotic arm.
Wow.
Oh, very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. But I have a picture. Maybe I could hold it up of me and my wife at Comic-Con.
Nice.
Yeah.
Neat.
And she's Daria, which has nothing to do with Star Wars.
Yep, I see it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was fun. I spent countless hours just with hot glue and burning myself making that thing. I wish I still had to show off, but at least I have the picture.
Cool.
Well, I don't have my up. I can't get it upstairs because it would wake my 3-year-old up. But because I forgot when we started this. But I have Thomas. What you were saying reminded me. I was from 1995 for many years into the whole Decipher Star Wars customizable card game
Yes.
world.
Oh, that's
And so
fantastic
I've
game.
got a lot of those
Uh-huh.
around, so I was digging those up the other day, and I had some extras, and like my daughter's like, "Is that Obi-Wan?" I'm like, "Yeah, you can have that one." It's like, "Oh, okay, I don't want it. You can have it," because she'll like it for 2 minutes and give it back. So I have those. Those are probably that was a big kind of gateway for me in to a real kind of fandom, probably like middle school. But really, if this isn't cheating, I've got sort of my two things, my setting here. So every time if I can do this without making anyone seasick here, let me turn this around. Every time we record, this is what I'm looking at. So I have this little shelf here, which
wow.
is cool. And I love this Kylo Ren centerpiece thing. It's so sweet. So it's like the frozen, like laser bolt here, like floating from like when they're on Jakku.
Yeah.
And then the fire in front of them. So that's kind of cool. The Death Star was a gift from my my brothers-in-law for Christmas, one of the many gifts. And then the second thing I would just say is if you can see all the lightsabers on the wall behind me here. So the two ones with the blades were the Force FX ones, which are awesome. And I just want to point out, as big of a fan as I am, I could never, from just me personally, I could never justify buying one of those. So the Anakin one, we're at a party, a Christmas party at my wife's cousin's house, and we're talking about Force Awakens had just come out. She's like, well, she's like, we have some like lightsabers in the basement. Like we have some extra ones. Do you want one?
What?
And my wife is looking at me like, don't. I'm like, I didn't say anything. Like, she offered me. So what happened was my uncle is super generous, and they have 2 sons and 2 daughters. So when the prequels are coming out, he's just like, he comes home with 4 like FX lightsabers. Now the boys are wild and they're going nuts, and the 2 girls, now I'm not saying girls don't love Star Wars, Angela. I mean, you know more about it than I ever could.
Thank
But
you.
like these 2 girls were just like, that's not really my thing. Like, and they're watching their brothers run around, like hit each other with lightsabers. They're like, eh. So these were like in the box, like from like 2005, like untouched. So she's like, just take it. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And then they got me the Vader one over here for like Christmas a few years later. So those are pretty awesome. But just on that note, I just had to show you guys this. I made this, okay, in like 1994. So like my grandfather had some wood in the basement, so I just went down and I started gluing popsicle sticks on this thing. So this was my first attempt at sort of like an Anakin's, hilt sort of thing. So I found it in my parents' basement. So I'm with you on that, Andrew.
You just pointed it dry too, just like
Yeah, just like I didn't activate it. So yeah. So there's lots of stuff around here, and my wife made me that Yarn, the child from
Oh, that's
Mandalorian.
awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, you know how I justified.
More than 2. I'm sorry.
You know how I justified buying a Force FX lightsaber was I bought it for my wedding. At my wedding, at a Chaldean wedding. At a Chaldean wedding is there's very traditional to have like these dancing sticks. A lot of churches use that too. So I was like, I'm not gonna use a traditional dancing stick. I'm gonna come out with a lightsaber.
Oh,
so
awesome.
I actually bought one and came out with I have a Luke
Perfect.
Skywalker one. Yeah.
Wow. Is there video footage of this?
There is absolutely video footage.
Oh my God.
I'll send it around.
Share,
Yes.
man.
Yeah,
Share.
absolutely.
Well, speaking of lightsabers, my first thing is actually a drawing from one of my best friends who's a priest, and he always gives me something really simple for my birthday, like a box of Cheez-Its or like something you can get at the dollar store, because he's also a religious priest, and so he doesn't have a lot as far as his budget goes. But this past year he actually drew me something, and he's not really the artistic type, but I don't know if you can see that. It's a lightsaber, and it says, "Heed the call to the light, let go of the dark."
Oh,
Nice.
That is
So-
awesome.
You know, for me, he probably didn't think it was much, but I know he spent a lot of time on it, and it was very personalized. So I just thought that was cool. And then another thing, friends and family. So my mother-in-law bought me the teapot that is the Death Star. So you can take it apart. So you've got the
Oh, that's sweet.
That is
yeah. Yeah, so I'm a big tea drinker. I don't drink coffee. I drink tea. And I did not own a teapot, believe it or not. So this was my very first teapot, and I enjoy it very much. So, yeah. I
Bruce
drink
Tea
out of the
destroys
Death Star.
planets.
It feels kind of
As you
weird,
should.
though, like if I make a red tea, because then I'm like pouring
Yes.
this red liquid out of the Death Star and drinking it. It's kind of like, what am I doing? But yeah.
Nice.
So
that is awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. That was really cool. So we are going to move into our next segment, and we're calling them just like Star Wars party questions. So these are going to kind of be rapid fire questions that I'm going to throw out, and I will just kind of go in a certain order because it'll just make it easier. So Thomas, you'll be first, Andrew second, Angela third, Mike fourth, and I will conclude. And so, for each of the questions that I throw at you, a little explanation is okay, but try to keep it. We'll just keep it moving because there's a bunch, and then we do have some listener questions as well. So, first question: if someone who isn't currently a fan of Star Wars asks you what they should read to get into Star Wars for the first time, what would you recommend? Thomas.
All right. So the starting point, you have to watch A New Hope. You have to start with A New Hope, and then you can move out from there.
Rogue One. I think it appeals to a mass audience, and it has enough of the old, connections to the old stories, to the Skywalker, movies to intrigue people to get into it.
I'm laughing because in my notes I wrote episode 4, no, Rogue One, no. So I finally settled on Mandalorian. So watch the
There you go. That's
Mandalorian.
good.
That's good.
And I had the same battle, so I maybe Rogue One and Episode 4 right after it. So.
My battle was with the original trilogy and Timothy Zahn's trilogy from back in the 80s or back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but you got to start with the trilogy.
Yeah.
So, second question: who is your favorite Star Wars hero or villain, or do both?
Oh gosh, now you throw me for a loop. I mean Vader, obviously. But I think I also really have enjoyed Ahsoka. She's grown on me so much through her journey.
I'll have to second Vader. I mean, if you include, you know, the Anakin storyline, you know, before he turned to Vader, before he became a villain, and all that, from the shows to the comics to what, you know, the movies, it's Vader. It was Palpatine for a while, but Rise of Skywalker kind of ruined that for me a little bit.
Oh.
But I mean, I'm still a big Palpatine fan. But yeah, and I'm always a sucker for Luke.
I'd say top 2 heroes would be Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, and top 2 villains would be Cad Bane and Asajj Ventress.
Ooh.
Good choices.
Well, I would say Obi-Wan's always the top of my list, and I never really entirely feel like I know why 100%, but he just is. And villain, you know, the ones you guys said all pretty obvious, but maybe a not so obvious one, relatively recently introduced into canon. I really liked Thrawn in Rebels.
Yes.
And he just, like, in the pipe organ with him, and like made the hair go up on my neck, like just as a, you know, not even a, like he could maybe be in another show, you know, like it wasn't, if you didn't know his background and the stories and stuff like that, like the other novels and all that. But he's a pretty chilling one, I think, for me.
I think it's probably goes without saying my favorite villain is Jango Fett. Favorite hero is Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
And their fight scenes in Attack of the Clones is kind of what got me hooked on
Oh,
everything.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, question 3. What is your favorite ship?
The Blockade Runner. The classic first ship you see, Blockade Runner. Absolutely.
Gosh, I mean, obviously Millennium Falcon. It's a piece of junk, but it's also like the the fastest ship in the galaxy. And I love the design of Darth Vader's TIE fighter, the X1. It's just so menacing, and I like how TIE fighters look, even though they look like they're not practical at all, the way that they're designed. But it's really it's a cool ship. And AT-ATs, I'll just throw those out there.
So I was struggling with this, but I settled on the Falcon just because of what we learned about L3 from Solo.
From Solo, yeah.
I'm really into the Razor Crest
Nice.
from Mandalorian. It's just it's fun. It's got that bucket of bolts, you know, sort of Millennium Falcon aspect to it. It's not a ship that really a lot of people are going to be talking about. But yeah, I like that one.
I decided to go with one that is kind of obscure because of the main Millennium Falcon kind of things. So I went with the Jedi Starfighter from Star Wars Episode 2. And the reason
those are pretty cool.
Reason for that was
Yeah.
because I remember playing the video game Jedi Starfighter and just
nice.
really enjoyed that. So, okay, next question. What would your lightsaber look like?
Oh my gosh, this is tough. So I really like I like the sleeker designs, and I like the there was a series of post original series or post everything that was white lightsabers with these Imperial like follow downs, and it's not canon anymore. It was like Luke's son, and there was this whole series. It was awesome, but they had white lightsabers and they were very sleek. They were almost like katanas. That would be my lightsaber design.
Well, I love Darth Maul's lightsaber, so it would be a double-sided lightsaber like that, and I would probably make it green like Luke's, and green is like one of my favorite colors.
So I love Ahsoka a lot. I would definitely do the 2 blades, white blades, and my hilts would be invisible until I ignite the saber.
Oh,
Very cool.
Okay, that's awesome.
I picked one off my wall. It would be this one, I think, which all of these were made from Home Depot. When I was a new dad and was like, I need to go do something that I can control for a minute. So yeah, I think I go back and forth between blue and green, but I'm feeling blue today. So.
And I definitely would go green lightsaber, and I don't really know what style I would like, except for I would like it to be made out of Beskar.
Ooh,
Nice.
Practical.
makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Smart.
Next question. Based on your personality, which force power would you likely have? And I threw in an extra one. Which force power would you want? So one based on your personality and one based on what you actually would want to have.
I think personality-wise, mine would be the ability to calm people. I have the tendency to do that, and so just kind of that situation. I love that moment in Phantom Menace when when Qui-Gon reaches across and just like completely calms down too much Jar Jar Binks. That was so fantastic. I think what would I want? I would love to just be able to have the Force push power. That's so awesome to me.
Based on my personality, probably Force persuasion. I'd like to think I'm pretty good at trying to get my way. And in turn, that's probably the one I would want because of that. But yeah, it would also be cool to have the Force healing powers. I mean, for obvious reasons, and just to help people out.
Yeah, so for me, mine are the same for both questions. There's this really cool Jedi that not a lot of people know about. His name is Quinlan Voss, and he has this really cool power to touch an object, and then he can see the memories of the last person who had contact with that object. And that goes with my personality just because I really try to see people and I like to hear people's stories and to know about them. So, and I also like puzzles. So I think he uses that to sort of like solve problems. So, yeah.
Well, I would say Force healing. Which I didn't expect to say, but it popped in my head when you asked, Father, because it's like I used to tie it to like my affinity for Wolverine. That's a different whole thing. But I was like, I tend to heal very quickly, and I don't really know why, but I'm glad I do. And so I was like, if I could give that to someone else, that would be really, really handy. Which one I would like to have if the sort of like Force projection thing didn't take so much out of you and you could basically bilocate like Padre Pio,
Yes.
That would come in handy. I'd like to be able to be in two places at the same time sometimes.
So for me, Force healing would be probably one based on personality, but not healing myself, but healing other people. Because one of the identities of priest is the divine physician. So what I would want is telekinesis. I want to move things with my mind. I want to move rocks.
We all do it.
Right.
We all do it.
Right.
Every one of you sits there and looks at doors, and you're like,
Yeah. Right.
Remember that old car commercial with the kid doing that and like the truck?
Yes.
oh yeah.
Yes.
And then dad moves the button. That's epic.
Or just when you walk into the grocery store, it's like,
Oh yeah.
Yep.
We've all done that.
Right.
You can't be a Star Wars fan and
Not do that. Yeah.
Okay, next question. What type of droid would you want to be for a day?
All right, I don't have a type. I have a very specific droid.
Okay.
I want to be HK-47 from the Old Republic.
Yes,
if you have not seen that character, he's fantastic. He is the just a smack talk droid. That's what he does. He's a hunter-killer droid, but he's been told not to hunt kill. And so everything he talks about, he refers to all living beings as meat bags continuously. That's what I want to be.
Okay.
I think obviously for me it would be R2D2 just because of like the breadth of knowledge that he has, and like he's spent time with Anakin and he's kind of, his story kind of like bleeds through the whole Skywalker narrative, and just to be a part of, like, just to have that information or like that memory, RAM or whatever, would be amazing. But I would also love to be IG-11 on that last day of his last day. Just be, you're like badass, just doing it for the greater good.
For me, an astromech, just because I think it would be fun to stick my little arm into all those little sockets and spin the wheels and learn all this secret information about the Empire and cool stuff. So yeah.
Mine was weird. I said a gonk droid, and only because not because life is easy. We see them getting picked on plenty of times, but I just feel like it's just acceptable for you to take your time. Like they don't ever do anything fast.
Angela, I'm with you. I would be an astromech droid, and not because of all the information that they can get, but because of all the cool adventures they get to have by riding around in those fighters.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. On which planet would you build your vacation home?
Dagobah.
Okay.
I love Dagobah.
Okay.
I know I'm weird. I
Kind
love
of cute,
Dagobah.
but
I love it.
Oh man, I thought about this. I think ultimately it would be Tatooine because I would like to be just in the. It'd be nice to be isolated in the middle of the desert, and I like the desert, and to have like an underground sort of house seems pretty cool. Like a little like a hut or something, and maybe I'll meet some interesting people along the way because it seems like a lot of people just end up there. So I think there'll be some adventure there too.
Well, I wanted somewhere scenic, and at first I thought Naboo, but I didn't want to run into Palpatine, so I decided on Kashyyyk.
Nice.
That's a good one.
I did go with Naboo. It reminded me the most of Italy. So.
Angela, I'm with you. I went with Kashyyyk because
Wow.
I want to dwell in the trees,
Nice.
and it's tropical.
I thought I would be pretty safe there too with all those Wookiees.
Yeah. Okay, here is a time-appropriate question. If you had to be quarantined on a Star Wars planet with one other character, where would you go, and who would you go with?
Obi-Wan. Where would I go, though? That's the question. I think we'd have the most luck being quarantined on Hoth. So I'll take that one.
I was also gonna say Obi-Wan. Where would we go? I mean, I would just like to go like to Costco with him. Just
Strange planet
yeah.
is this?
Yeah, beat the lines, not have to wait in the line, just force persuade our way through, and probably won't even have to pay, leaving. So, yeah, that's during quarantine. I think he would be the best person to be around.
I think for sure we know Andrew likes to get his way after this podcast.
If anything,
Persuasion.
Okay, mine's totally out of canon, but I would go with Ahsoka to Scarif.
Ooh, that's. I might bump into you on Scarif because I love the beach scenery. So that was I was thinking along the same lines, but I was going to go with Plo Koon because he's always got a mask on, and I'm not going to catch anything from him. So.
See, I was thinking along the lines of you. I was thinking practical. I would go to Ahch-To with Rey because
There
if
you
I
go.
got sick, Rey could just heal me. So.
There you go.
Nice.
perfect.
Okay, this is sort of an open-ended question, but give your favorite best Star Wars recommendation.
All right, so little-known comic book series called The Golden Age of the Sith, and it's when it came out in '96. It was when I was really, really deep into Star Wars lore, and it talks about like the origins of the Sith, but it's all laced together with this tale of this brother and sister who are discovering hyperdrive technology. So it gives you like a really good history view of Star Wars from a completely different perspective.
Yeah, mine is also a comic book. It's Vader Down. This like with again Darth Vader being like probably my favorite character. I mean this comic series really shows you how powerful he is. I mean, really in the original films, you just got flashes of how powerful he really was. It wasn't really until the end of Rogue One where we really saw like, okay, this guy can really pummel through anyone and anything in his path. And this series though really concentrates on how powerful he is and what he had to go through. It's brilliantly, the illustration is brilliant and the storytelling is great. It's my favorite Star Wars comic, period. I think a lot of people would enjoy it.
So mine is a novel, and it's basically a recommendation if you've never read a Star Wars book before and you want to start. I would suggest Star Wars Bloodline, which is a fairly new novel that came out. It's written by Claudia Gray, who, in my opinion, is one of the best authors in Star Wars novels. And it takes place 20 years after Return of the Jedi. Focuses on Leia. So you get to spend time with Leia, learn more about her and what she goes through, trying to avoid telling people that Darth Vader was her father.
Yeah, mine's a novel too. It's from Legends, so it's not canon, but my wife got it for Christmas a few years ago. It's just called Kenobi by John Jackson Miller. Mm-hmm. And what's neat is I read it probably like 2 years before any announcement or even hint was made about an Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And I just went nuts because, I there's plenty of things that they could change, for the Obi-Wan series that would be totally fine, even if they didn't do anything quite like that. But it's the same kind of concept, like what, him on Tatooine, dealing with everything that's happened to him, trying to, commune with Qui-Gon, and, like Yoda hinted that he was going to teach him. And then he gets, it's this whole, like the Ronin type samurai thing. Like he doesn't have this order that he's part of anymore, but it's in his blood, and so he's a Jedi. He can't hide it. And there's people that need help, with this local issue on Tatooine. So I really enjoyed it quite a bit.
Mine is also books from the Legends universe. It's the Fate of the Jedi series, which was the farthest forward post Return of the Jedi that the Legends universe ever played with in the novel form. But the whole series itself is it's based around the premise of the Odyssey. And so it's based around the premise of Luke and his son in the Legends universe, Ben, going off on this quest. So rather than some galactic civil war or anything, it's based around that, and it's my all-time favorite series of books ever. So that would be my recommendation.
Very cool.
Going to books, the next question is, what is your favorite Star Wars novel, and do you read or listen on audiobook?
I read Star Wars books. I don't know why I never really listened to any of them on audio, but I like the novel Shatterpoint. It follows Mace Windu. It's the very first Clone Wars multimedia project that came out. So it was after the movie, but then kind of related to that whole thing. And really, really good book with lots of deep probing questions about what it is to be a Jedi, what it is to follow the light side of the Force, what it is to fall from the light side of the Force. So definitely recommend it. And like I said, when I made my RPG, that's what I wanted to have the feel of, was that, centralizing destinies and choices that the Jedi made.
I haven't read many Star Wars books, but of the ones I've read, the one that comes to mind, one of the first ones I read was Shadows of the Empire. And I just remember that I think that's the first book I actually remember reading. That, and I read the novelization of A New Hope. That's really before Phantom Menace came out. That was like what really got me, like kind of nerd level into Star Wars, because my friends were all into the novels, and I started reading them at a young age. And that one I thought was like, it's just a good bridge, I think, from the original trilogy, and then going into the prequels.
So I mentioned Quinlan Vos and I mentioned Asajj Ventress. So I'm going to say Dark Disciple, which pairs them together as an unlikely duo. And Quinlan has to learn the ways of the dark side in order to succeed in his mission for the Jedi Council. So he becomes a Dark Disciple, and it's very, very intriguing and insightful.
And
not for everybody, though.
And based off of Clone Wars episodes that never aired.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, I would, the Miller book I mentioned, Kenobi, was probably my favorite, but audiobooks, I've been interested in trying to get into those more because, I don't know, I wonder what it'll be like for me, because I tend to, remember and kind of learn better that way, with certain books. But I don't know yet. It depends on who the characters are in it, because if I'm just imagining, I don't know. If whoever's doing the voices and stuff isn't quite right, that sometimes throws me off. So We'll see. I'll give it a try.
So my favorite Star Wars novel that I came up with, it kind of changes over time, but Star Wars Thrawn. So this is the canon novel about how Thrawn kind of came into his own within the Empire. It's basically a Sherlock Holmes detective novel, with Thrawn being the Sherlock Holmes character. And I do both. I listen and I read. And I would just make a plug that audiobooks are fantastic. And in general, I do quite a bit of driving, so audiobooks are awesome. Mark Thompson is my favorite of the Star Wars narrators. There's a few others, but I think he does the voices very, very well. So Going from novels to comics, what is your favorite comic series or episode, I guess?
I like the Legends series. It follows Luke's son in the not so distant future from Return of the Jedi, and it's a really interesting take on how the world kind of reconstructs itself from what was left in the Empire's ashes.
It's again Vader Down. Any of the Star Wars Vader series that came out, like I think around 2015 when that series started. Those are, I think, the best comics. And then also I'll plug in Knights of the Old Republic from Dark Horse Comics. They did a great job with that story.
Yeah.
You know, I love art and storytelling, but I haven't made my foray into the comics yet.
Yeah, I haven't too much either, but I just recently came across the Darth Maul series with Son of Dathomir. That was really, and I really kind of stumbled upon it trying to just connect the dots and remember, or figure out where exactly he's been, from Clone Wars where we left off with him, and then that gap to now him on Mandalore and stuff in these last few episodes of season 7. So that was really helpful and just really pretty compelling, I thought. So those are pretty cool.
And Thomas, I would agree with you. The Star Wars legacy in the Legends universe with Cade Skywalker, a far distant descendant of Luke.
That's right. Yeah, he's descendant. Yeah.
Yep. So that would be my favorite. If you play Star Wars video games, which is your favorite?
Back to old school. Man, TIE Fighter.
Yes.
The TIE Fighter series
Yes.
is so good. It just so far beyond, like it was everything Wing Commander wanted to be, and with the Star Wars universe just strapped onto it. So it was excellent.
Awesome.
And 64 Star Wars Episode 1 Racer.
Yes.
I played that game more than any other Star Wars game, and probably more than any other game in general. Maybe it's up there. That game was just so much damn fun. And the first Knights of the Old Republic game on the original Xbox, I spent many hours playing that game as well.
If you have a Nintendo Switch, Episode 1 Racer's coming to the Switch.
I know, and I cannot wait.
So
I have played very limited video games in my day, and I've never owned a console, so no games for me.
It's been a while for me, but I really enjoyed the Jedi Knight 2, like the Jedi Academy game was a lot of fun. Just the way you could direct your character through that. And what was the other one? When you said N64, Andrew, that reminded me of the Rogue Squadron game on there. I totally forgot. It's been so long, but man, yeah, we played that for a long time. That was fun.
My favorite is definitely Knights of the Old Republic.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, by hands down my favorite.
Can I tell you a 15-second story real quick about that?
Sure.
It's my brother's story, but he got really into that game and into Knights of the Old Republic, and he gets to the final fight, and it right after a cutscene, the game glitched, and it froze, and it couldn't go back further than like where the glitch was, and I've never seen him like this is like he was in high school, and he was just like. Like he'd been playing for weeks, and it was just
that would be
oh my
infuriating
gosh.
at that point in the story, though, because that's a big deal.
He's in seminary now in Philadelphia, and he's still like I'll bring it up, and he'll still get mad about it. And it was like 20 years ago, or 15, or whatever. It was so funny.
I feel like I'd also be remiss here if I didn't mention the Lego Star Wars games, because the Lego Star Wars games are really, really great. If you want a great entry point into just the goofiness that Star Wars could be, that's the way to go.
Yep. Okay, what is your favorite era for storytelling? High Republic, prequel, Rebellion, post Return of the Jedi, Resistance.
Yes. More Star Wars. Just more Star Wars. If I had to pick one, the Old Republic is. I really like the Old Republic.
Yeah, if I had to pick one, Rebellion.
I would say post Return of the Jedi, picking up the pieces.
Yeah, lately I've been feeling some more of the stuff. I don't know if it would be, between High Republic and prequel era, but some of that stuff with like Mother Talzin and the Night Sisters and some of the lore, maybe Plagueis, like would just some things that have been familiar but not really explored yet. So
Yep. For me, it would be the High Republic era, the Qui-Gon Jinn sort of era. So all the way up until Phantom Menace, but not really going farther. Keep the comments, I imagine, short on this. But what is, in your opinion, is the best Star Wars movie, and what is the worst Star Wars movie?
Nope, I'm not going to. Empire Strikes Back is the best. Period.
Okay.
I'm not going anywhere else.
Yeah, Return of the Jedi is probably my favorite. With Empire Strikes Back is like they're probably like 1A, 1B. Worst movie, sorry, Father, but it's Attack of the Clones. I'm sorry.
That
It
hurts.
just is.
That hurts.
It just is.
oh my.
I would say the worst movie was the Clone Wars animated movie.
True.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the one, actually. That's the one.
The best movie that would take forever for me to, analyze. But so I'll say my favorite is Return of the Jedi.
I'm an Empire Strikes Back guy, and I feel like I've tried to be very open-minded, and it sometimes shifts, but it always comes back to that one for me. And I agree on the Clone Wars movie.
I think that's
Love the rest of it, but
that's a universal consensus. I will put that as my least favorite.
or the holiday special if we're counting that. But
Yeah.
What? No.
No cinematic release, so
Yeah, for me the top one is Attack of the Clones. So not necessarily because it's the best, but it's the one that resonates most with my story. Okay, we're going to jump into a few of the questions that came up in the comments, and I'm going to kind of jump through them. So the first question, and I'm sorry, but the comments have gotten long, so I don't remember who asked these questions, but I'm going to do my best to just ask them. So the first question is, do you guys need a beard to be a fan?
Ask Angela.
Angela comes out.
never grown one, so
So no. Okay.
it would be so funny if you had a fake beard tonight. No. Jeez.
Okay. What was the character from the original trilogy that you think added the most to the success of the films?
I would say Han Solo.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because he's the guy that grounds everything into a reality. Like everybody else is like wizards and sorcerers and
He's
crazy.
like the everyman.
He's the
Right.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's almost like the audience. Yeah.
I think
And
you have
probably.
to... Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna add in like maybe I would add Vader to that too because, he probably sold the most toys and costumes.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, if you want to
And-
talk success.
And I would throw in Luke too, because Luke is very meant to be the one also that you identify with and you grow with.
Yeah.
So
But he's so
I know, but we all start there.
Yeah.
But then by Return of the Jedi, so. So another question. I was a fan of the Han Solo movie and feel like there's more story to tell. I don't think Disney will make a sequel, but do you think a Han Solo series would work?
My biggest hang up on that is just who would play Han Solo.
Yeah.
But besides that, I think it would be neat to see more of his adventures. I think that was definitely the thing that everybody enjoyed about that movie was seeing his adventures. So and revisiting his humor and yeah.
What about an animated one?
That could work.
Yeah,
Maybe.
that could work. yeah.
I don't think a live action one would work though because we've already had Serenity and Firefly series.
Yeah.
That's as close as you're going to get to a Han Solo like continued series, and it just didn't. I don't know. Maybe it was just way ahead of its time, and it didn't resonate with people.
But the
when it was.
Mandalorian sort of has a same-ish feel.
Yeah.
So
It could be.
I think
Interesting.
I think a Lando series would work. I think
That
I
would-
would watch.
Yeah.
I like Donald Glover, and I think he would. If you can get a series with him going, I think that would do.
Maybe
well.
a mini series.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you could even get, if you did try an animated, attempt at that, depending on how you, like the style they would adopt, and if they could get him, like they get some of the same voices that might connect too. But I don't know. It just it came to mind.
do you think Lucasfilm will do a Darth Vader series or movie? I'm inclined to say no.
I
No,
hope
I don't-
not.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give too much away, but I hope that we have seen the absolute last scene of Darth Vader. I hope, I very, very sincerely hope, because, yeah, I very, very sincerely hope that we have seen the absolute last scene of Anakin Skywalker, period.
I think it is possible to overdo him.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
And
Disney would.
Disney
would. I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, probably not for a very, very long time.
So
I think,
much Star Wars.
yeah, but I think eventually, like we're seeing now, there's gonna be a point to where, I mean, maybe you won't see remakes of Star Wars, but you'll see like revisitations, you know, maybe 2-3 decades from now of these older characters to introduce to a newer generation. So I think it's just a matter of time. But
I do it
like,
subplot that time when Vader had mouse ears on his helmet.
No, they've got a good handle on it. Let them have a good handle on it.
Yep.
I agree. They should leave him alone.
Yeah.
Final audience question: who do you think would win in a fight, Cad Bane or Din Djarin?
Ooh.
Who has who has time to prepare? I think that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah.
Out of the two of them, who knows the fight's coming and who has time to prepare?
Yeah, that's a good point. I would probably, maybe I'm biased, but I would say Cad Bane. I mean, he's fought a Jedi, and he did pretty good. I think Din seems to be, I mean, he's a really good fighter, but I don't know. There's just something unpolished about him that I wonder about.
Do we assume that the child's not cheating? Like, and just there, you know, like, I think he'd put up a good fight, but I don't know. Cad Bane's good at getting away too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think he'd, one way or another, he'd get out of it.
Yeah, I would say Cad Bane. Well, I love his character, and like, yeah, he's gotten away. Yeah, he's gotten away with a lot of stuff. I mean, he stole a holocron, and you know, I think he's had I mean, from what I've seen, the most he's gotten to the most trouble. I think he's gotten to more trouble and has gotten out of it, like you said. So I think that's a good point.
Invaded the Jedi Temple, took someone from it, and escaped with them. That's impressive.
Bold to even think of doing that.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that is it for the audience questions. Over the past week or so, I have received a number of special guest transmissions, and I'm going to share those with you. Unfortunately, these transmissions will only be viewable with the video to those watching on Facebook Live and anyone rewatching the video. So my co-hosts, you won't be able to see the videos because it's a Skype issue, but everyone will be able to hear the audio, which is more important. So listen well, because it's their words that matter, and then just rewatch the video later. So the first guest transmission that we will start with a certain Mandalorian who played quite a big part in the finale arc of the Clone Wars.
Hey everyone, Katie Sackhoff here, aka Bo-Katan. So this is just a quick shout out on May 4th. So may the 4th be with you. For Angela, Thomas, Mike, Andrew, and all of the listeners, from Father Andrew, aka Father Fett, which is an awesome name. So thank you all for listening to Secrets of Star Wars, and thank you all for your love of the show and Mandalorians. Have an amazing day, and I hope that you are all healthy and safe and have an amazing rest of the year. All my love. Bye.
Well, that was
Wow.
cool.
That was so
Is
awesome.
everyone blushing?
Yes.
There's more.
That's amazing.
Next up is Emily Swallow, who's taking a break from forging armor as the armorer to say a few words.
Cool.
Dude.
You're probably wondering why I am wearing a Beskar eye patch. I am too. But I thought it would be a nice way to start out this video to say Happy Star Wars Day. This is a shout out for Angela, Mike, Thomas, Andrew, and listeners of the Secrets of Star Wars podcast, which sounds really interesting. My husband and I want to tune in because it seems like a rad combination of subjects. So I hope that you guys have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time celebrating Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. And I'm so glad that you enjoy The Mandalorian and The Armorer. And until next time, this is the way.
This
Oh
is
my
the
God.
way.
This is the way.
I know.
I'm saving this episode, Father.
Oh, this you have no idea how excited I've been. Next up, we have two special guests who are joining us from the Ghost during the Rebels era.
Whoa.
Hi there, this is Vanessa Marshall. I play Hera Syndulla on Star Wars Rebels, and I just wanted to give a huge shout out to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast, to Angela, Mike, Thomas, Andrew, and of course, Father Fett. I hope you have a very, very happy Star Wars Day. Keep the faith, keep creating the best podcast ever, and may the 4th be with you.
And with
Hey,
your
what's up?
spirit.
This is Taylor Gray. I play Ezra Bridger on Star Wars Rebels, and I wanted to transmit from the Ghost, Spectre 6, Secrets of Star Wars, the podcast. I hope you guys have enjoyed this podcast and this show. I hear that he talks about Star Wars and faith, and you guys have seen Rebels, which is so cool. And thank you for going on this journey with us. I know we have a very special day coming up. It is May the 4th. May the 4th be with you, Star Wars Day. So to all fellow podcasters and listeners to Secrets of Star Wars, I hope you are having a wonderful day, and you're sharing your sentiments of Star Wars, and you're using it as an escape from these funky times we're in with the quarantine. But happy May the 4th. Keep listening to Secrets of Star Wars, and may the Force be with you always. See ya.
Ezra.
Wow.
Yes.
Come on.
Where is he?
Off in the unknown regions.
That was a far transmission.
We have one more guest. So we have one more guest who's transmitting to us from his time during the time of the First Order and the Resistance.
Hey guys, Christopher Sean here, aka Kazuda Ziono, sending you guys the biggest, most awesomest shout out from a good friend of mine. We probably go way back like months, maybe years, maybe decades, millennia. Me and Father Andrew, we go way back, aka Father Fett, giving a huge shout out on this special day, Star Wars Day, to Angela, to Mike, to Thomas, to Andrew, and to all the listeners of the Star Wars podcast, Secrets of Star Wars. Again, this is Christopher Sean and my boy Father Fett, wishing you a happy Star Wars Day, and may the 4th be with you.
Dude.
That was too cool.
Awesome.
My daughter's
crying,
gonna be
you
blown
guys.
away.
Right.
Dom can attest at how excited
Oh
I've
my
been all week
gosh.
for this.
Oh, that
Wow.
was something.
So that is my gift to you guys. Happy
Thank
Happy
you.
Star Wars
Oh,
Day.
thank you.
That was
Fastest
awesome,
May the
Father.
Fourth
Thank you so
ever.
much, Rob.
Man, we got to get you something now.
this
Revenge of the Fifth.
this is what I was so wanting. So what's awesome is as those videos were playing, our video was also shown. So your facial expressions are saved forever. So well, so it is definitely time, unfortunately, for us to wrap this podcast up. This has been such a blast, and thank you to our live viewers, and of course to all of our listeners who listen to us and support us, and keep following us, keep going on the journey with us, and especially as we continue to go into the future of where Star Wars is going to take us. It's an exciting time to be a fan. So may the 4th be with you always.
And
And
with your spirit.
So, of course, to wrap up, though, we need to say a few of the normal things. So please let us know, of course, what you thought. How did you enjoy Star Wars Day at home with you and your families? What does being a Star Wars fan mean to you? You can email us. You can comment on our Facebook page. You can tweet at us. Let us know, how you guys like to live out your fandom and what being a Star Wars fan means to you. So you can email us any feedback, of course, at starwars@sqpn.com, and you can find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia and on Twitter at SQPN. And so we would also, of course, like to take this moment to thank all of our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Wars, including Ruth M., Jessica W., Sarah N., Scott S., and James C. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give, of course, make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows that we do here at StarQuest. And if you would like to join them, you can do so by visiting sqpn.com/give. Also, please, please, please be sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any number of the podcast players out there. Please do so and follow us as we continue to broadcast the show. You can also follow us on the SQPN YouTube channel and be sure to click the bell to get notifications for new episodes. And you can also find all of our previous episodes at sqpn.com/Star Wars. And so next week we will be back to our normal schedule and we will be reviewing the final 2 episodes of Season 7 of The Clone Wars. So be sure to tune into Disney Plus and finish those last episodes before listening to us. And until next week, Angela, thanks for joining us and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thomas, thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Father. It was great.
Mike, always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Father. I'm blown away.
Andrew, of course, thank you as well for joining us.
Thank you again, Father, and may the 4th be with you.
And with your spirit. I am, of course, Father Andrew Kinstetter. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.